to.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May meeting of the Mansfield Shire Council. Good evening, fellow councillors, council officers and members of the public who may be tuning in tonight. I will now call on each councillor and ask them to confirm verbally that they can see all councillors and hear the proceedings. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can see all councillors and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Rabi.
I can see all councillors, council staff and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Webb.
I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
I'll now ask each councillor to confirm by raising their hand that they could all hear each statement of the councillors. Thank you. Madam CEO, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have an apology from Councillor Slatton tonight.
Thanks, Madam Acting CEO. I will now read the statement of commitment and call on each councillor to confirm their commitment. As councillors of Mansfield Shire, we are committed to ensuring our behaviour meets the standards set by the Mansfield Shire Councillor Code of Conduct and Councillor Charter. We will at all times faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in us by the community. Councillor Holcomb.
I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Rabi.
I confirm my commitment.
And Councillor Webb.
I confirm my commitment.
Thank you, councillors. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Holcomb will recite the council's acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our meeting is being held on the lands of the Taungurung people and we wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. We would also like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. I'll now call on each councillor and ask them to declare whether they have any conflict of interest in relation to any agenda items tonight. Councillor Holcomb.
I have no conflict of interest in relation to any agenda items.
Councillor Rabi.
I have no conflict of interest to any agenda items.
Councillor Webb.
I have no conflict of interest in regards to any agenda items tonight.
Item number 7, confirmation of minutes.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I would just like to declare a conflict of interest in relation to agenda item 13.2.2. So I'll depart the meeting at that time.
Thanks, Madam Acting CEO. Confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I have a recommendation in relation to the confirmation of the minutes? Councillor Rabi. Would you like to read it out, Councillor Rabi?
Yeah, I'm just looking for it. Got it here. That the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meeting held on Tuesday, the 19th of April 2022, and the additional meeting of council held on the 26th of April 2022 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Can I have a seconder to that? Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. We have no representations tonight, no notices of motion. The Mayor's report, item 10, is tabled. Councillors, can I have a recommendation in relation to the Mayor's report? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that Council receive the Mayor's report for the period 19th of April 2022 to 11th of May 2022.
And a seconder, Councillor Rabi. Any comments regarding the Mayor's report? All those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Item 11 is the reports from council appointed representatives on committees. The Australia Day Awards Committee, which has not met. The Mansfield Shire CEO Employment Matters Committee did meet and will next meet on the 1st of the 6th, 22. Goulburn Murray Climate Alliance, Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We've not met. We're meeting next this coming Thursday, the 19th.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. The Hume Regional Local Government Network has not met since we last met. Councillor Sladen is absent for the Lake Eildon Land and On Water Plan Implementation Committee. The Mansfield Shire Council Audit and Risk Committee, Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we met last night with the Audit and Risk Committee. There was a full agenda of items, but mostly procedural. We did have a presentation from one of the executive. The Manager of Community Health and Wellbeing, Nola Bales, presented on her area, and that's something which the Audit Risk Committee are going to do on a regular meeting basis, is get someone from the various departments to give an overview of their department. So that was well received. Thank you, Nola Bales. The other thing that came out, which I thought was interesting, our internal audit organisation or company, AFS, gave a review on the application of risk management in planning, prioritising and execution of capital projects. That was personally quite an enlightening report in terms of expose the fact that we are at some risk in the engineering area with how we manage and track capital projects. It's a concern because of the sheer amount of capital projects that we've got going forward. In the budget, there's about a bit over 10 million, 10.5 million, I think. And with the extra capital projects that have come through in the last couple of weeks, that's now over $20 million. So there's no doubt that these capital projects are critical to this council going forward. So the audit committee, the report from the internal auditor recommended that software be purchased so that we can track these projects on all sorts of different metrics and minimise any risks that may occur by something to do with these projects slipping through the cracks or not being tracked correctly or not reported correctly. So hopefully that's something that we can, as a council, can look at going forward. But I thought it was really a good report presented by the internal auditor, and shows the value of the internal auditor when they highlight such weaknesses in our systems. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. The North East Local Government Waste Forum, Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Our next meeting is Wednesday, the 8th of June, and that will be our final meeting. Recycle Victoria through DELP will be taking over. It'll obviously have an interesting report for the June Mansfield meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Look forward to that. The Rural Councils Victoria have not met since we last met. Councillors, can I have a recommendation? In relation to Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council note the verbal reports provided by councillors in relation to their representation on external committees.
Thanks, Councillor Webb, and a seconder, Councillor Rabi. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Item 12 is public question time. There are no public questions listed for tonight. Item 13.1 is the Chief Executive Officer's report. Council, do we have any questions or queries or comments in relation to Chief Executive Officer's report? No. In that case, can I have a motion in relation to item 13.1? Councillor Ravi.
Yeah, sorry, I've just lost my spot on this new system here that we're trialling. Mr. Mayor.
It's all right. Page 12.
Yeah. For all of you that are wondering out there why I'm doing this, that we're trying to go paperless. So our motion is that council receive and note the Chief Executive Officer's report for the period of 19th of April 2022 to the 6th of May 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Ravi. Seconder to that motion, Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is passed. Item 13.2.1 is the adoption of the Mansfield Planning Strategy. The responsible officer is Manager for Planning Environment, Melissa Crane. Ms. Crane, are you? There she is. Councillors, do we have any questions or comments in relation to item 13.2.1 for Ms. Crane? Councillor Ravi.
Yeah, my question to Ms. Crane is about the community engagement process that this went through. Could you outline that process, please?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the community engagement process was actually quite extensive. It was quite a bit of fun, to be honest, to talk to so many members of the community as part of this process. So we had it out on exhibition for 8, nearly 9 weeks, and a time where we had lots of people in and around Mansfield, which was really great. So we were picking up a lot of hot people that only come up on holidays. We also had we did a range of notifications through adverts in the paper, social media blasts. We also had sent out nearly 500 letters to directly to people, as well as we had we had Main Street marquees. So we had 3 of those over the time. I thank the councillors for their helping out with those. That was really, really great to test to see how the planning strategy was hitting the mark for the community. We also had drop-in sessions available for people to come in and see us face-to-face, as well as 3 online sessions that were available for people that were more remote. So there was lots of ways that we could engage with people. And we also then had lots of written submissions, and myself and our strategic planner, Oscar Jenkins, spoke to a lot of people directly over the phone or in person as separate meetings when they requested them. So it was a really good process to go through, and I felt like it was a great way to test how the strategy was working in terms of what the community's expectations were.
Thanks, Ms. Crane.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, also, just as a follow-up to Councillor Rabi's question, the committee members, how can they get a copy of this strategy if they need to do so?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor, once the final strategy is adopted, we'll be putting it back up onto our website as a final version, but we'll also make it available if anyone wanted it emailed and the like. We're more than happy to provide it upon request if they don't want to go to the website, but it'll be available on our website after the adoption.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions, councillors, can I have a motion in relation to item 13.2.1, Councillor Holcomb?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the motion that is the council adopt the Mansfield Planning Strategy 2022 to inform the preparation of an amendment to rezone land and develop local policies in accordance with the recommendations of the strategy. And point 2, commence preparation of a planning scheme amendment to implement the recommendations of the strategy.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate the planning department for the work that's gone into this. Is a really impressive piece of strategy that's been put together here, and I recommend as many people who are interested in our community and interested in where the community is heading to get a copy of it. It very clearly sets out where we're heading from a planning point of view, with both the objectives and the strategy underpinning that. So well done, Melissa, for all the work done there and your team. Also, I'd like to thank the people who contributed to the strategy. As you mentioned earlier, in response to Councillor Rabi's question, this has probably been, I think, possibly the largest community engagement that I've seen, certainly since I've been watching council anyway. So well done to you all on that. And it really addresses some of the questions that we're all facing now in terms of shortage of housing, shortage of rentals, where we're going to put our housing. It's absolutely critical, and how we're going to provide housing to our younger generation looking for first homes. So it's an absolutely critical piece of planning documentation. So well done, Melissa, to you and your team again. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, seconded. You wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm absolutely happy to endorse and mirror Councillor Holcomb's comments. Amazing body of work performed by the planning department within council around this, and the community engagement has been enormous. If you somehow hadn't found out that this was happening, certainly it is worth having a look, because I feel that this particular document is going to be a cornerstone of this council's strategy moving forward. It answers a lot of questions, and I find myself referring to it quite frequently now when I'm talking to people out in the community, particularly the things that Councillor Holcomb mentioned about housing supply, what we're doing about encroachment into farmland, what we're doing around climate change and things like that. There's a lot of answers within this document that people can find. And it's a very useful document to be able to refer back to and go, this is where we're headed, and these are the things we know. So it's a good way to show that we're across a lot of issues, and as a council we need to be, and it's completely transparent and a good place to start if you're looking for answers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. When we ran for council, we were told to fix up planning. It was loud and clear, and I think this is a long way towards doing that. I think it's a fantastic document. Ms. Crane and under planning and infrastructure and the general manager, your whole team have to have a shout out, because it's a lot of work, but it sets the vision for Mansfield. It's a responsible document. We're working with Tarongarong. We're addressing climate change as part of our ongoing assessments, and environment, landscape, significant trees. It's all in here, and it's well worthwhile getting hold of this document. I'm specifically impressed with the amount of time and effort that went into community consultation. There was a lot of work, because we are listening to the community. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. And I'd just like to add that this, well, congratulations to SGS, who delivered this document, but also to the planning department, who have done a lot of work in here, have answered a lot of submissions, and there were a lot of submissions. There was a lot of consultation. I'd like to thank my fellow councillors and council officers. They're attending, I think, what was 4 open days in the main street where the public could come along and view the strategy and have input into it. And as Ms. Crane said, it was out for consultation for 9 weeks. If you couldn't find this strategy, then you weren't looking hard enough. But this strategy sets the path for where we're going until 2040. And it's critical because it will facilitate orderly development of urban land uses, and it protects areas of significant agricultural productivity. It's environmentally significant for sensitive areas, and it identifies the need for additional infrastructure to service our evolving communities. And this strategy will guide us where we are going for the future in our development. And I'd like to thank all the people who contributed and submitted to this document. That was fantastic to have everyone's views on it. And we look forward to this planning strategy being incorporated into the Mansfield planning scheme. So thank you. So now, councillors, we have a recommendation, and we've got that recommendation. So all those in favour of the recommendation, that motion is passed. Item 13.2.2 is the next item on our agenda. Madam's Acting CEO, I think you have a conflict here for this agenda item. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you. So this is the planning permit application, P003/22, use and development of land for industry, distillery, cellar door and sales and consumption of liquor, 126 Godwills Road, Mansfield. The responsible officer is Tim Berger. Is Tim coming in? No, Ms. Crane. Okay. Councillors, do we have any questions or comments in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Directed to Ms. Crane. Just obviously this agenda item did come to council at last meeting, which we deferred a decision based on the objections around this planning permit. Could you give us a really high-level overview of the actions that have happened since our last meeting and the outcomes?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. We, following Council's request for further work to be undertaken on the application, Council officers, the permit applicant and the objectors met and discussed the range of concerns that they had with the application. It's a massive credit to both the permit applicant, who was willing to make a lot of changes to their proposal to consider those objections, as well as the objectors who are willing to be open to consideration themselves. So I'm very grateful to both parties for that. We're also very ably supported in that we had Council's Field Services Coordinator and Coordinator of Engineering Services to talk directly to the community about what Council could do in relation to some of their other concerns that weren't directly related to the application, but had come out through part of that process. So there's still some work to go on in that space between council and the community, but it was a really productive meeting, and we'll get some great resolutions for that area, which is how we've resolved the objections with the changes to the proposal as put forward to you tonight.
Thank you, Melissa.
Councillors, any more questions or comments? In that case, can I have a motion in relation to item? Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that is on our agenda tonight on from page 24 to page 28 inclusive. The Council, having considered all matters under Section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, determined to issue a planning permit P003/22 for the use and development of land for a distillery, industry, cellar door and sale and consumption of liquor on Lot 2 on plan of subdivision 444132F, commonly addressed as 126 Googles Road, Mansfield, in accordance with the endorsed plans and subject to the following conditions, which are on this agenda from page 24 to page 28 inclusive.
Okay, so those, I've had different page numbers for this recommendation to you, Councillor Arabi. So would you be able to run through, just not read out, but how many points there are to this recommendation, please?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 27 points and an attachment.
Yep, so from point 1 to 27.
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor Arabi. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Arabi, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would, Mr. Mayor. I'm extremely pleased with our community. This is a great outcome. It shows the community working with some people that have obviously worked very, very hard and to get their business up and running. They've both worked together for Mansfield. This will be a good opportunity for Mansfield. It's a good opportunity for Hank and his partner. It's a growing business that they have. And I was very impressed that the 11 objectors all withdrew their objections in what I think is a record amount of time, 3 weeks, to get this show on the road. And there's a lot of work in creating a small business. We had been given or accepted a $100,000 grant from the beginning. We're delighted to support, and I'm glad that the community, with Hank and his partner, have come to an amicable agreement to get this going. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Arabi. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just following on from what Councillor Arabi said, I'd also like to thank the applicants and the objectors for coming together. We said at the last meeting that we knew that the people that lived on Old Tonga Road were pragmatic people, and they've proven that they are. And I also would like to thank the applicant as well for his ability to come to a compromise, which obviously wouldn't have suited him greatly, but it was worked in the community interests. So I congratulate them all for doing that. I'd like to congratulate Melissa and Tim for getting everyone together. That's the sort of outcome you'd like to see. As councillors, the sort of outcome that we want to see is a community outcome that's come from the community. So thank you to your team, Melissa. And finally, I'd like to thank Councillor Arabi. At the meeting last time, we had a motion put forward that neglected the views of the objectors. And after some it was a difficult one to get a motion up and pull it together on short notice, but you did, Councillor Raby, and I'd like to congratulate on doing that. And I'm sure all those 11 ratepayers who were objectors knew they were being listened to, and we all got a result that we all should be pretty pleased with and pretty proud of, frankly. So thank you. And now it's up to, I wish the applicant, Hank, and his wife all the best in their business. It's great to see an entrepreneur get his business up and going. So I wish them all the best, and let's just get on and fix Old Tonga Road as best as we possibly can under the circumstances. So well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Certainly mirroring the comments of the other two councillors here, it is an excellent outcome. Swiftcrest is a fantastic local business. What I really like to highlight is that this is a really great example of council not adding excessive red tape or bureaucracy to what could be a potentially sensitive process. There's been examples in the past, both in Mansfield Shire and other places, where red tape has hindered progress and hindered entrepreneurship within our community. This is an example of proactively jumping on a potential issue and coming out with an excellent result. So yes, again, congratulations to the planning department and the consultation that's gone there. This is a phenomenal opportunity for Swiftcrest, Hank and Carrie. Well done, guys. And an incredible opportunity for the Mansfield region as a whole to capitalise on what they're doing. So well done to everyone.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Item number 13.2.3 is the property leasing and licensing policy. Responsible officer is Manager of Planning and Environment, Melissa Crane. Councillors, do we have any questions or comments in relation to this item? Councillor Raby.
Yeah, Ms. Crane, through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Crane, just can you provide us an indication of how much different this is to the previous property leasing and licensing policy, and whether we're looking at a procedural matter here or there's many, many different changes, please?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. This policy is predominantly the same as the previous policy. The previous policy also included all the procedures which are not appropriate to be held in an actual policy document, and it's been updated into the new format. We've also worked to put further definitions within the policy to make sure it's really clear what each element is referring to. So it's genuinely procedural at this point. Thank you, Councillor Raby.
Thank you, Ms. Crane.
Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this item? Councillor Raby.
Yeah, the motion is that Council endorse the Mansfield Shire Council Property Leasing and Licensing Policy 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Webb. Councillor Raby, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Webb.
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors?
Nothing, Mr.
In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 13.2.4 is the men's shed lease at 17 Errol Street, Mansfield. Responsible officer is Manager of Planning and Environment, Melissa Crane. Councillors, any questions or comments in relation to this item? Or Ms. Crane? Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this item? Councillor Raby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Put the motion that 1 lease 17 Errol Street, Mansfield, Lot 2 on plan of subdivision 339723 to Men's Shed Incorporated for a period of 10 years with 2 further terms of 10 years, commencing on the 1st of April 2022 for the permitted community use associated with the Men's Shed Incorporated. And 2, receives rental of $1 per annum plus outgoings.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Can I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor to the motion.
I do, Your Honour. Your Honour.
I'll take that.
Well, that's a Freudian slip. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. We always wanted to be a lawyer. I'd like to. This is just a great outcome, I've got to say. Since 2002, when Mr. Don Hodges first received notice from the Untitled Shire to basically when in 2007 there was an MOU agreement between Mace and the Men's Shed stating quite clearly that as soon as Men's Shed were incorporated, the lease would be handed back to them. This has been an ongoing matter for this Shire, and it's taken up a lot of our time, but I'm happy to give as much time as I can to this because of the outcome. And the outcome is Don's vision. He has succeeded. It's become, the Men's Shed has become an incorporated body. The Men's Shed now holds its own lease with council. The Men's Shed have incorporated other community groups within it. So it's not really a men's shed, more of a community shed, really. And I'll cut it short by just saying I'm extremely happy that that we've got to this outcome. It's just a pity, really, that 2 groups couldn't get to a resolution, and we, in the end, had to make a hard decision, which this council won't shy away from hard decisions. But at the end of the day, Don Hodges, God bless him, has got his vision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb, as seconder, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I will endorse what Councillor Rabi said wholeheartedly. It's a great result for the Men's Shed, and I think going forward from here, they will go forward in leaps and bounds. They've got some great plans for what they're going to do there. This will really cement their independence. They're in charge of their own destiny, and I think council has played a big role in getting a result for the Men's Shed that I think we should be pleased with, and I'm sure the Men's Shed will be pleased with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is item 13.2.5, which is the Planning Scheme Amendment 104 Dead Horse Lane, Mansfield. Responsible officer is Manager for Planning Environment, Melissa Crane. Councillors, do we have any questions or comments in relation to this item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just Ms. Crane, it mentions in the report under the key issues that in 2015, the landmark was earmarked as part of the Mansfield Structure Plan to be considered for rezoning to low density residential zone. Can you tell me what that means, please, Melissa? Just give me a bit of an understanding of what that's all about.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Mansfield structure plan at the time did a fairly in-depth analysis of how much land would be needed for residential development and the like, and identified land for rezoning, which at the time was to be rezoned, but this land had the potential to be rezoned to low-density residential into the future. Low-density residential being what was the zone for the land to the south, which was Stockman's Rise, which is a minimum of 2,000 square metre lot sizes. So technically that's what the planning scheme says at the moment, which is why we had some trouble getting it through the minister in the first place. But the Mansfield planning strategy and the work that we've done in that has identified that that is not a zone we need more land in, that we do actually need more general residential zone. So the general residential zone doesn't have the same minimum lot size of 2,000 square metres. So this land can be developed at a higher density, but we generally experience across Mansfield when we have a residential development in our general residential zones of lots between the 700 and 900 square metre lot averages. So that's what we anticipate will be the resulting development in this site, which will be in alignment with what is being considered for the land to the south of it, which is recently rezoned to general residential as well. So while the 2015 strategy said that we would need low density residential there, the work we've done in the Mansfield planning strategy has identified that that was not appropriate. It also said we'd only get 45 new houses a year for the next 10 years, and we had over 100 every year in the last 10 years. So there was some assumptions made in that strategy that have been corrected as part of the planning strategy, which is why we'll now put it back to the minister now that the Mansfield planning strategy's been adopted with the request for the general residential one rezoning.
And just following on from those comments, if it's going back to the minister, how long do you think that process takes?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it will depend on the minister. They do need to They do have timeframes that they need to give us authorisation within, which is in a period of time. What we will do to try and ensure that we've got every I dotted and every T crossed so we don't run into a problem is we'll submit it to them as a draft in the first instance, make sure that they don't want any little particular changes, and then we'll get the authorisation. So we're hoping to get the authorisation in a relatively quick turnaround, but we are at the mercy of the minister's office when it comes to these. So we do hope to get them through fairly quickly, but we have the exhibition documents ready to go. So as soon as we get that authorisation, we can start that moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, following on from Councillor Holcomb's question, Melissa, and I suppose this is a general question, that this is just a planning overlay, isn't it? It's not, the developer, if they want to develop this land, has to come up with a development that's suitable to council and come back with that submission to be passed. Is that correct?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, all this amendment is to rezone the land to allow it to be developed for residential purposes. There would still be subject to a planning permit for that actual development, which would look at lot layout, lot size, any impacts in terms of how they're going to manage stormwater, road construction and the like, and that would be assessed as part of any future planning application.
Yeah, sure. So that will involve, community consultation as well.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, both elements, both the amendment and any future planning permit would be both subject to community exhibition processes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Holcomb.
Sorry. Just following on from the Mansfield 2022 strategy that we've just endorsed, this fits perfectly within that strategy. Am I correct in that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So it's ironic with a rezoning like this, particularly this one actually is a really good example. It actually ends up being exhibited 3 times. So once it was exhibited as part of the Mansfield planning strategy because it's been identified in the planning strategy as appropriate for general residential rezoning. It'll get exhibited as part of the amendment to rezone the land. and then it'll be exhibited again as part of any future planning application to develop it. So there's 3 opportunities for the community to have input into that development.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, councillors. There's no further questions or comments. Can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council adopt the 104 Dead Horse Lane rezoning amendment, resolving to implement the proposal generally in accordance with the adopted documents through Amendment C54 MANS to the Mansfield Planning Scheme. Point 2, request under Section 8A, 2 and 3 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 that the Minister for Planning authorise Mansfield Shire Council to prepare Amendment C54 MANS to the Mansfield Planning Scheme that is generally in accordance with the proposal. 3, notify the Minister for Planning that when it exhibits Amendment C54 MANS, Mansfield Shire Council intends to give full notification of the amendment under Section 19 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 for a minimum statutory exhibition period of 1 month. 4, when authorised by the Minister for Planning, exhibit Amendment C54 MANS to the Mansfield Planning Scheme under Section 19 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Could I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to say that it's considering the pressures that we're under as a community, our housing pressures, and also our planning strategy coming through, this is really timely. And I'm glad to be able to get this off the ground as quick as possible. As mentioned throughout our discussion, this doesn't mean an instant housing estate is popping up overnight. The developer will need to design something which is appropriate for council, to come back to council for approval and to go out to the community for consultation. This is a really important step to help address our housing concerns. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I mean, we're hearing everywhere about the housing shortage. It's a federal election issue, but no one's got any real answers what to do with it. There's all talk about what should be done. But I think this is a great example of us doing something. It's no secret that there's a big housing shortage in Mansfield. There's no rentals. I was told just recently by a real estate agent who's been here a long, long time. It's the first time that he has no rentals available. There's no new rentals. His rental book is what it is, and there's no house available for rent on his rental book. So we've got an issue with rentals there. We've got an issue. We have a problem with our first home buyers. They can't afford to get into the market. And we have a problem with getting staff here, and one of the reasons is because there's no houses, and certainly no affordable houses. So this is a real attempt to address that issue, and so I'm really pleased with this recommendation. And the fact that it's part of our strategy and ties in perfectly with that is a great outcome. So thank you, and I'm fully supportive of the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item 13.3.1 is the Targa High Country February 2022 report. The responsible officer is the Economic Development Officer of Tourism and Events, Gareth McDonald. Welcome, Gareth, to the meeting.
Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
I am good, thank you. I'll just get my video going. There we
now
go.
We can see you. Thank you. Welcome. So we're discussing item 13.3.1, Targa High Country. So, councillors, do we have any comments or questions in relation to this item? Councillor Ravi.
Yeah, thanks through you, Mr. Mayor. G'day, Gareth. Welcome to the meeting. Gareth, how confident are we that these figures that Targa supplies, are they supplied by Targa or by Tourism Northeast or by us? And how confident are you that they're correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we actually went about it a different way this year in gathering our data. So I worked with Targa and was able to put some questions through their driver survey to the actual participants around expenditure and things that they do while in Mansfield and during their reconnaissance drives as well. So I sort of feel that it's a pretty accurate representation of the amount of money that they spend as individuals and teams in that driver. We were still waiting for an amount from Targa directly on what they spend as a business while they're here as well. But they did have a bit going on with Targa Tasmania at the time that we were looking for a final figure. But yeah, I'm quite confident that through the data that we have there, it's a pretty true representation of what the actual entrants spend. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. G'day, Gareth. Just quickly, a very high-level question without notice for you. Mansfield Shire invest about 30 grand for this particular event, and we're getting about 10 times that in I guess economic benefit back to the Shire. In comparison to other events similar in scope, scale, size, or anything else you've got to draw off, is that good? Is that bad? Would you expect more? Would you expect less? Where does it sit, I guess, on the graph of return of investment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. It is about $11 per dollar that council invests that we get return through Targa. Being an event of that scale and the amount that we do invest, there isn't really anything that we put that much towards of that scale at the moment. So it would be hard to sort of draw on that. So I would probably take on notice that I can do a bit more research into other events around the region, can speak with Tourism Northeast to see further events through that to see if I can get some data around return on investment on similar events.
That would be great. Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Gareth. And Gareth, I'm coming from a different perspective. I put more of a value on people's lives. And I noticed that Motorsport Australia have just, I think, is it right where they banned any more races until further notice, is find the recent death in Tasmania. Is that correct?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, 2 days ago, Motorsports Australia, they basically pull any permits that are through Targa. So Motorsports Australia, the overseeing governing body of any four-wheeled racing that happens in Australia. So they've pulled the permits for Targa until they can investigate further into the recent death in Tasmania. So basically their thing was saying that they don't accept that death is part of the event, that, you know, it's kind of a risk that drivers are taking on board. So they put that back to Targa to basically get further recommendations. And I know that they're looking at doing further investigation into that. It is only 2-day-old news, so there's not too much around it at the moment. But yeah, they have pulled Targa's permits that they had issued already. So I'm not sure where it's looking at for future events where they will issue permits, or whether they're going to reissue those permits with new sort of, you know, stipulations in there. But yeah, it's all quite fresh news on that.
I think, though, one of the concerns I had in reading the report, which actually was a good report, but it was Steve Carden, the senior constable or senior sergeant at the Mansfield Police Station. And I quote him here, he said that the thing I am uncomfortable with at this stage, from a community safety perspective, is the street stage of Targa. And then he quotes from a very pro-Targa long-term Mansfield resident, so someone who's pro-Targa, is that this race is an accident waiting to happen. And when that's coming from the police, in his report to council, and we're looking to sanction a race which it's clearly got a history of killing people, it makes me really uncomfortable as a councillor sitting here. And I don't care about the economic impact at all. One life lost on our watch, to me, is a real concern. And I think that's really got to be taken into consideration, regardless of what motorsport says. But motorsport will certainly answer it for us.
Yeah, and
it'll answer for us one aspect. Then I think we as council should really take on board what that policeman has said in his report and the record of another death. And at this stage, I gather there's been no pedestrians killed in this, no spectators killed in this race. But according to a pro-Targa long-term Mansfield resident in the policeman's report, that's an accident waiting to happen with spectators.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it is obviously of concern. Even Motorsport Australia at our debrief did discuss the speed in street stages, that they would like it lowered, and that was something that was going to be part of their recommendation moving forward. In Mansfield's Targa High Country, there hasn't been any race-related deaths. We've been very fortunate there. There has been one death, which was a heart attack, so outside of the race sort of conditions. But yeah, obviously in Tasmania, there's been 4 deaths in 2 years, so there is something definitely there. Whether it's the Tasmanian Rally, whether it's something that Targa need to address. But yeah, definitely it all has to be taken into consideration, as is sort of put in the report there.
Thank you.
Councillor Ravi.
Just following on from Councillor Holkin's comments there, question to Gareth. I believe the Sunday streetscape event is a show of cars, is it? Is at speed and not an actual race. So is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's not actually sort of part of the Targa race. They don't receive points or a score sort of towards their kind of final result as part of that street stage. So it is more of a demonstration. I know from feedback, the drivers really enjoy it because it is, they feel sort of rock star kind of styles. But yeah, it isn't actually part of the race. It's more a demonstration.
And just with Mansfield Shire looking at going carbon neutral very shortly, which is great news. What's Targa doing to offset their emissions? Do you know?
I'd have to take that on notice and get some information from them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ravi. Gareth, I've just got one question. The figures that you've got here in relation to the February 2022 event, where we have a support crew spends per car, estimated accommodation nights. What percentage of that is related to Mansfield, and what percentage would you envisage is Mount Buller for that? Those figures.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So we did specify in the questions that were related to that it was for Mansfield only. So I was quite adamant about trying to gather information just for Mansfield without Mount Buller accommodation in there. So it was stipulated in there that just for specifically Mansfield, those figures do apply.
Okay. Yeah. So the total spend per car, when you asked them that, you said, because they went into 2 or 3 different shires as well as Mansfield, different areas. So, okay. So that would be an estimation, I guess, of theirs then for what they actually spent in town.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So it was stipulated Mansfield, so hopefully they did take that into consideration. Through other towns that they go into besides Mount Buller and Mansfield, they don't really stop in those towns. They have a lunch stop in Whitfield, but besides that, they don't really stop. They just kind of drive through the town and then return to Mansfield or Mount Buller.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions, councillors? No, in that case, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion B that Council notes the report on the February 2022 Targa High Country event.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Seconder, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, you wish to speak to the recommendation?
Yeah, I do. I guess just a couple of comments. I am concerned with the recent deaths in the Targa Tasmania event. And I guess as well illustrated by Gareth, we don't yet know if this is related to Targa as an organisation or the Tasmanian event specifically. I know their Gold Coast event, I believe, has also been without fatality. So my hope is that any concerns of Motorsport Australia can be addressed. I also note that in the Senior Sergeant's report, he concluded with that there's nothing that couldn't be overcome. I'm concerned about putting excessive red tape in the way of tourism events that come to our region. I am concerned with the loss of life. It's unacceptable. But these drivers are taking a known risk, and they are well qualified, and they are licensed to perform the tasks they're doing. I want to balance all of these points out with promoting our region as a destination for world-class events as well. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I have nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Any other councillors? No, in that case, I'll just put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 13.3.2, the Highline 2022 event report. Economic Development Officer, Tourism and Events, Gareth McDonald. Councillors, do we have any comments or questions in relation to this report? Councillor Ravi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Gareth, I know you've done a lot of work here, and this report is fantastic. It's very well written. It's very easy to understand, and I know you've done a lot of work on this Highline event last year. So I just wanted, it's less of a question and more of a comment. I'd like to thank you specifically for the work you did, and I know without your work it wouldn't have been as good an event as it is. I'd also like to thank you specifically for drawing up this report and sitting down with the event organiser so the council has a better understanding of how we can help and to make this a world-class event, which I'm sure it will be probably next year, and if not the next one. Thank you very much. I won't go on about it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Ravi.
I do have one question, apart from that long-winded chat. Gareth, the statistics that were supposed to be captured, and they didn't quite get captured. How are we going about circling back to get those?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, thank you for the acknowledgement, Councillor Ravi. Yeah, so the data collected, we are still working with the event organisers to try and gain further information from their ticket sales. We did do some surveying on site of some competitors and visitors, spectators, to sort of try and find out who was at that event and who was there, where they were from, which is in the report there. It's quite a good event for bed stays and the amount of time people were in the area. For future data, we are again just really trying to work with the event organisers to see how much we can get from their event sort of pages, their statistics available through ticket sales and entrance, and also with Tourism Northeast to see where we're getting clicks from as well for that event through their promotional channels as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Gareth, just from your reading of it, and you've done some of the numbers here, was it financially profitable for the owners this year, do you think?
All through you, Mr. Mayor. Hard for me to say. I'm not sure what extra costs. I know they did put in a fair bit of their own money alongside the grant that they received. And I don't believe that their goal for this year was to actually be profitable. Was to really set up a base for this event to grow. I do know that Shannon from All Terrain Cycles has recently been appointed as the Crankworks head slopestyle person for the Crankworks event that's happening in Cairns this year. So that's a big step forward, and that was based on this event. So it's a little bit off topic, but it is sort of, I think that they were doing this to build that. It wasn't so much about profit this year. And we are working with them as well to look at different ways that they can raise revenue through sponsorship and various other avenues. We've made some recommendations for them to ensure profitability so that they're not sort of relying on grants, because obviously it was a big grant they received, which I think a lot of that's gone into really forming a foundation for the event, over the next few years.
And I couldn't quite work it out from the, thank you for that. I couldn't quite work it out from the report about whether the exit road going out where we were originally going to plan it, is that going to be done this year, or it's still in discussion? And if it's not going to be done this year, what's the alternative?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we've strongly recommended it. It's not on council land, so we won't be doing that through road. It has been strongly recommended that it should be done for a multitude of reasons. We've also spoken with planning in depth to make sure that there are basically two sets of rules that they will need to follow. If that road's there or if it's not, there's basically different traffic management that will have to be put in place depending on the level of the event. So basically, if the road's there, it's a different set of rules that they need to go by basically to have the event. If the road isn't there, then it's a lot more traffic management and quite a lot more to it.
So the decision on that road, that's with them, is it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor? Yep, correct. It is with them. There is a section of it which is council owned, which we would maintain, and we did put that to them that we would cover the cost of our section, but the rest of it is with the event organisers.
So, and just my own knowledge, the road is there's only two owners of that road in its entirety, isn't there? So one's the existing owner of the block and the other's council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Gareth. What's the potential to leverage this particular event to potentially have some smaller festival type events off it so that we can actually maximise the potential of the visitors to town? Is that something that could be looked at or work with Tourism Northeast, or a bit of body of work around that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we need to get a probably a better understanding of who is there, and that would be working with the event organisers to really work out what that group wants and what they want to see. I know that a lot of them are quite serious about their competition, so I don't think they're going to be going to after parties every night and that sort of thing. And with that said, there was, looking around town over that weekend, every restaurant was full, every pub was full. So they are a good market that spend money, which is great. And they do support sort of events. If a council's doing something and showing their support, they return that. So I kind of feel that there's definitely scope to build probably a 2-day event. Sorry, not a 2-day event, a 2-day kind of festival in town around it. It would just have to work within what they're doing out there, because obviously the focus is at the track out there. So trying to work out how we could incorporate that into something in town. And we have worked with the event organisers as well to look at outlying towns for accommodation and packaging as well, so that they benefit from the event also. Excellent. Thank you.
Gareth, I just have a question about the seed funding. Is that all been spent on this one event, or is there some left over for future events?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was to spend for this event, so we are still waiting just on the final reports, which they have till June to put through to us to see exactly where everything is. But yeah, it was for the initial event. However, as part of the seed funding, there was the stipulation that the event did have to run for 3 years. So without further funding from that thing, so it had to be in the first year that was all used up.
Yeah, just as a comment, I attended the event. It was a spectacular event up there, but there was some issues with the event, with traffic getting in and out, and I was a bit disappointed to hear that we were notified at the last moment about the road not going through. So, and I'd just like to thank the council staff who stepped in at the last minute, including yourself, obviously, who came in and helped to alleviate all the parking pain that was going on in the traffic and the traffic management. So thanks because that was very last minute. And I think there was 4 or 5 of them that gave up their weekend to do that. So that was good of them. And hopefully, as Councillor Holcomb highlighted before about the road in and out, hopefully that can be addressed very early on in the piece by the event organisers before it goes ahead next year. So look forward to seeing their plans around that. So councillors, thanks for that report, Gareth. And councillors, can I have a recommendation, a motion, please? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that council receive and note the overview of the 2022 Highline event, including improvement opportunities for the 2023 event.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Seconder, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I would. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, I thank Gareth for this report, and I thank Gareth for, I know that 4 or 5 big days you did just to get this up and running this year. This is going to be a huge thing for Mansfield. I love this because it's carbon neutral. No one's using any fuel for fun. These kids and blokes, young guys, younger than me anyway, that they're in, they're fit. They look after their bodies. They love eating good food, and it's an intense sport. And this sport is apparently one day going to be an Olympic sport. I think that Mansfield's very, very lucky that we can support this. I know that there were people from all over the world wanting to come to this year's event, and they couldn't get here because of COVID. Next year is going to be bigger and better. And for all of you watching out there, Crankworks is the preeminent world body for this type of event. They run 4 events, one in Canada, one in Cairns in Australia, one in, I think it's in Austria, and I can't remember, North America. So for the event organiser to be part of Crankworks gives me a very good feeling that this is going to be an event here for a long time. It's going to pull in tens of thousands of people to our district. So the report, Gareth, and as you can understand, I'm a big supporter of this. Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can only endorse what Councillor Raby said, and so well done, Gareth, for you and the team that you work with, and for the staff that came in after hours to help address some of the issues that were there. It's expected in a first-time event, and we'll only just get better next year and learn from the experience of this year. So, and well done on the report. It was a really good, clear report. So thank you.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Entirely endorsing the other councillors' comments. It certainly looks like there was a few little teething issues with this event. Hopefully next year we can already see they've got plans in place to remedy these issues which have cropped up. So looking forward to a fantastic event next year.
All right, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item 13.3.3 is the Tourism North East Quarterly Report 2021-2022, Quarter 3. Responsible officer is the Economic Development Officer, Tourism Events, Garrett McDonald. Councillors, have any questions or comments in relation to this report? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking through the report. I just have a few questions about, I guess, the overall strategy for Tourism North East. I know they've identified, as part of the Lake Eildon Master Plan, a huge potential in average visitor spend to increase that. There's absolutely nothing mentioned that I can see in the report, I might have missed it, about Lake Eildon, promoting Lake Eildon as a destination and the potential around that. Is that on the cards? Do you know, Gareth?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there isn't anything that I'm aware of that Tina put into place yet for that. Obviously, it sort of forms around that master plan as well that they would need to be working on. So yeah, at the moment there isn't. I can definitely take on notice and speak to them about future plans and present that to you. Yeah,
I see it as a glaring omission, particularly of our region and our shire. It's the second largest body of water in Australia, and the potential is absolutely enormous. And I think it's a glaring omission to not have something directed towards it at all.
Any other comments, or Councillor Raby?
More of a comment on the report. Under Ride High Country, it says here Highline was also the highest performing listing on ridehighcountry.com.au. So nice to see that Tourism North East have endorsed High Country riding. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we were pushing Tourism North East to get involved in Highline under the Ride High Country banner, and they came through with the live video stream, which was really well viewed, and also they did a big push through a campaign which received quite a lot of traction as well. I know that they've already met with the event organisers and looking at their involvement for next year to be a lot more than it was.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Gareth, just with respect to the Walk High Country, it said that the campaign and activity attracted 25,193 visitors to the High Country. How many of those came to Mansfield? Do we have any feel for that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a breakdown of those. We are seeking information. It was raised through the report that we did want to somehow figure out how much of that was actually in the Mansfield region. So I'm still waiting to hear that.
And do we know how many of those were actual walkers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming that under that, through the Walk High Country campaign, that is what they were recording. As to how they figured that out, I will have to take that on notice and get back to you as to how they actually came to that figure.
Yeah, thank you.
Gareth, I have just a question in relation to our digital marketing, and it says, Tourism Northeast manages the hosting and content for both MansfieldMountBuller.com and Great Victorian Rail Trail. T&E report shows council destination website had a decrease in both sessions, down 26%, and page views down 30% compared to this quarter last year. Given we spend 32,000 on digital marketing, is this a bit concerning, these figures?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is sort of an up and down where people are looking at obviously various locations, various places to go and visit. It's sort of I guess looking at it, it's hard to tell whether there's to know where that 20% is going. If it's leaving us and going somewhere else, we're not sure of. The digital spend also covers the other platforms that they do use to integrate into our website through ATDW listings, regional platforms that are set up. So we can sort of look at that. I don't think it is of concern when you look at the visitation numbers and what's coming through. So whether it's that people are just picking a spot and going and not really researching it as much, could be part of that. There's obviously, we compared to 2019 pre-bushfires and COVID as a bit of a baseline to see how we're tracking for that. So we did see, still a decrease in visitation to that, which would be expected against that. But looking at a 46% increase since last year on year, I don't see it as a sort of reason to be concerned when we're still seeing those figures.
Do we have long-term going? How far do these figures go back that we can reference these particular ones?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to see with T&E to see how far back they have those figures for.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, councillors? In that case, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The motion is that council receives and notes the Q3 report from T&E for 2021-22.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Can I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I don't. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rabi.
No, thank you.
Any other councillors? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thanks, Gareth. I think your time's up, so you've done well.
Thank you
for your attendance tonight.
Thank you.
Item 13.3.4 is the finance report from the 1st of January 2022 to the 31st of March 2022. The responsible officer is Anthony Smith, the acting general manager of community services. Welcome, Anthony. Councillors, do we have any questions or comments to Anthony? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Mr. Smith. Just a question. How would you sum up that your forecast for the end of the year?
In relation to the forecast, it is something that is a work in progress, and we continue to work with the organisation on, forecasting at the end of every month and being, I suppose, more accurate. In relation to the forecast, there's a couple of areas that we just need to revisit in relation to one area, which is risk management, that has a forecast of 544,000. Upon some further investigation, the figure there has been forecast up, but that forecast up of about $118,000 is actually in reference to the 22-23 budget. So we will be removing that. So that's a reduction there. Another area that we just need to do some more work is in relation to the economic development initiatives. They're currently underspent just in that line item of around $500,000. So we just need to, and they're forecasting that money will be fully spent by the end of the year. So we just need to revisit that area.
So taking into account those comments and based on how you forecast against budget, would you say how would you describe how you see that forecast versus the budget for the year in terms of verbal description?
Well, you'll note that when the adopted budget was presented to council, there was a deficit of approximately $1.5 million. And at the moment, the forecast is around 950,000 deficit. I think that will probably improve slightly between April and June.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I
so
just...
We'll be positive to budget, is what you're saying.
Correct. That's what I'm saying, Councillor. Can I just add one further comment as well, just in relation to the recommendation? It does say for the period the 1st of January 2022. That should actually read the 1st of July 2021 to the 31st of March 2022. I apologise for that mistake.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Councillors, any more questions? No, in that case, can I have a recommendation in relation to this item, please? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that council receive the year-to-date finance report for the period 1st of July 2021 to 31st of March 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only as much to say that that result looks certainly on paper and taking into account the forecast looks pretty pleasing, I think, from a council's point of view and I'd imagine from the executive's point of view. So hopefully it comes in as we're looking at it here, and if we do well, I think that's a very good result.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi, do you wish to speak?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. To emulate Councillor Holcomb's comments as well with that, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thanks, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item number 14 is Assembly of Councillors. Councillors, can I have a recommendation in relation to this item? Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council receive and note the Assembly of Councillors report for the period of 13th of April to the 12th of May 2022.
11th of May.
It says 12th of May on mine.
Okay.
Have you got the 11th, have you?
I have, yeah. Anyway.
So
Okay.
Has there been 2 agendas sent out?
I have 12th of May on mine, Councillor Raby.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, not sure that it's going to make a whole lot of difference because the last date is on the 10th of May.
Yeah.
So I think we can run with the 12th of May. Thanks, Councillor Raby. Can I have a second to that motion?
Mr. Mayor, sorry. The agenda I have lists 11th of May, the non-residents ratepayers meeting. I just want to clarify that's in your agenda as well, just to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
The
Melbourne non-residents ratepayers meeting.
no, it's not in my agenda. So
Two agendas.
come on.
It's in mine.
Yeah, it's in mine.
okay. So the ratepayers meeting was on the 11th of May.
Yeah.
Can we move? Can you, Councillor Raby, can you inform us of who was at the session on the 11th of May, or perhaps Councillor Webb, if you can, because you were there.
Yeah, of course. So Councillor Holcomb, Councillor Tehan and myself, Councillor Webb, was at the Melbourne non-resident ratepayers meeting. I note that on the agenda I have, everybody is listed, which is incorrect. So perhaps for the purposes of this, we remove that item completely off while we fix it, and then we can bring it to the next meeting, just for clarity. So we'll take it to the 10th of May, and then next meeting we can go from the 11th onwards.
Yeah. I'll read out the motion, Mr. Mayor, if you like.
Thanks, Councillor Raby.
The motion is that Council receive and note the Assembly of Councillors report for the period of 13th of April to the 10th of May 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Raby. Can I have a second to that motion? Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Item number 15 is the Council Resolutions Report. And I have a recommendation in relation to this item. Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion be that Council receive and note the Council Resolutions Register as at 5th of May 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. And a seconder? Councillor Holcomb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item number 16 is the advisory and special committee reports, nil, and 17 authorising of documents, nil. Item number 18 is the closure of meeting to members of the public. Can I have a recommendation? Motion, Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion be that Council close the meeting to members of the public under Section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider confidential reports in accordance with Section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 for the reasons set out in Section 19 below as listed in the agenda tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Can I have a second to that motion? Councillor Holcomb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. We will now leave the public meeting and adjourn back later when we're finished. Thank you. Are we in the confidential meeting now?
Give me 1 sec.
Oh, what's going on here? God.
She won't be a moment.
Okay.
We are all back in the main room.
Thanks, Maura. Welcome back to anyone who may be waited out there. And I'd just like to announce that the Mansfield Library refurbishment build project has been awarded to Lang Construction. So I would like to congratulate them and look forward to them working on this project in a timely and speedily and on budget manner. I'd also like to thank the other tenderers who applied. So that being that, I'd like to now officially close the meeting. Thank everyone for their attendance. 7:10. It was a good meeting, good robust debate. So thank you very much to everyone and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Yep.
You can close. Dina.
That's it.
That's it. I think everyone's gone.